All right, so we're right at time. We've only got an hour with everyone, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to run through a couple of introduction slides, and then we will go from there. Okay, so let's do this. First off, a little bit of the agenda. Right now is the welcome. Welcome, everybody. Then we have the masterclass. Then we'll be doing a live Q&A. So if you have questions, we'll put those in the Q&A tab. We'll do a little bit of a wrap up, and then we will all be done at 1 p.m. PT. Okay, so we have a couple new CMX Community Values. These are made for and were reviewed by the CMX community. We value our community's input and couldn't be happier with these. So just to quickly read them out loud: be generous, be groundbreaking, and be actively inclusive. We are very excited to bring you yet another masterclass. This series, again, is a deep dive into community-related subjects where we will have an expert, aka Colin, come in and deliver a masterclass with actionable tips that really solve community professional pain points and provides you all with the help and tools you need to succeed. If you have any ideas, which I know we're taking notes in the chat, please reach out to me. We want to know what you want to learn so we can help you grow and plan content that you actually want to come and see. A couple of the goals for CMX. We want each attendee to walk away with 1, meet 1 community professional. 2, get 1 actionable thing you can implement today. I've seen Colin's deck. There are quite a few actionable things you can implement today. And 3, advocate and grow the community industry. CMX events are powered by Bevy, a software company in the business of building and scaling communities. Everything you've seen so far with this event, from the RSVP page to the platform you are now, is hosted on Bevy. If you want to learn more and use Bevy for your community building, please visit bevy.com for a demo. It's voting season, folks. Yes, that's right. The Community Industry Awards are upon us. We are ready to roll the blue carpet. I was going to say red, but no, we're changing it. Blue carpet this year. So head over. And we're also planning a really great event. So head over and place your vote now for the Community Industry Awards. Super excited. Can't wait to see what I plan, because I'm still thinking about it. Okay, and now, the moment you have all been waiting for and the reason why you are here today. We have Colin Campbell, Head of Community at Outreach, and he is teaching a CMX Masterclass on balancing community growth versus engagement. In this masterclass, you will learn why quality versus quantity debate is a damaging distraction, how to think like an MBA about balancing between quality and quantity, and benchmarking stats. Colin, a little bit about you, which you already know, but I'm going to tell the audience here. Colin stumbled into career and community by taking a community-driven approach to content creation and promotion. Now he's the head of community outreach, working remotely from Milford, Massachusetts, but now he's in New York City by train, 3 hours away, where he spends as much as time possible mountain biking. All right, Colin.
That's right. Mountain biking is where it's at.
For you, everyone. Drop emojis in the chat.
Hey, everybody. All right, let me get my screen shared here and get into presentation mode. All right, so that's what we're talking about. We're going to talk about balancing growth and engagement. And maybe that title is a little of a misnomer because it's not necessarily about balance, as we will discover together. So first, a little bit about me. Just so you have context, work stuff. I spent a lot of time as a content marketer working at an agency called Grafton in Boston. I work with all kinds of B2B and B2C brands like Mr. Coffee and Crock-Pot and Iron Mountain. And I consider myself a manager by trade, team first, and I'm like a marketer / community person second, and definitely a community person totally by accident. And if you ever want to talk to me about fun stuff, I'm also into woodworking, I said mountain biking. Dogs are like my biggest hobby because I just have dogs and I spend as much time as possible with them. I'm Massachusetts native and I love Massachusetts. So we can talk about apple cider donuts and lobster as well. And just so you know what it's like for me, this is a picture of me, a real life event of me falling into community. I know I'm not the only one who has had like maybe a surprise career path into community. And so I want to say thanks, because I'm still figuring all this out. And two awesome community members helped me develop this masterclass for you all. So Max Pete of Freelance Founders and Emily Drew, readvoice.com. Whether you're here or not, maybe you're watching the recording, thank you both. And while I'm giving shout outs, I also want to throw a congrats to my former team member, Katie Ray. She was our community manager at Sales Hacker until recently, and now is going to be leading customer community at Clary starting very, very soon. So I'm really happy for her. And this also means I'm hiring folks. So reach out if you want to talk. Okay. We're going to talk about some specific stuff. This is just so you know what kind of world I'm living in, so you can maybe contextualize what I'm telling you. I operate Sales Hacker. It's a community owned by Outreach. It's a community of interest for modern B2B sales pros. The site gets about 300,000 visits a month. We have 90,000 subscribers to our newsletter, 31,000 full members, and that's in the last 16 months or so. So pretty fast growth. So when we talk about balancing growth and engagement, it's something to keep in mind. And we have a pretty cool forum. We have 2 blog posts. We put on lots of events for sales folks. We have a great blog. And this is what it looks like. And something, as we've seen this meteoric, that's the word, meteoric growth over the last 16, 18 months or so, I am constantly debating, and maybe this is you, should I be doing more of this thing, or should I be doing less of it, but doing it better? And that's probably why you showed up today. So you're not alone. We have these debates all the time at Outreach. And sometimes we hop back and forth over the fence on some of these things, and like a metronome, just oscillating back and forth. But some of the debates that I've heard people having, both at Outreach and in other communities, is should we have a lot more but less formal or more casual events? Maybe should we publish fewer articles and make them more in depth? Maybe we should just have fewer discussions in the forum and make sure they're always really high value, really responses, right? Or the opposite. And should we grow our community really fast and just, get a lot of members, or should we just try to make sure it's organic and only get the best members, or maybe something in between? So that you might see yourself in some of those questions. And so I think this is what that feels like. So before today, it's like the belief is you can either have quantity or quality, but not both. Because if you could have both, you wouldn't be debating how to balance them, right? You could just go for it and get both. And there's definitely a feeling that you need both to have a great community. And I don't know about you, but I also used to rely on a lot of old sayings like quality first, maxims to just try to guide me without really giving much thought to whether that was actually good advice for my context. After today, this is you. You're going to be like, oh, quality can be an input to, or quantity can be an input to quality. And maybe quality can lead to more quantity. And most importantly, I want you to feel comfortable in the trade-offs you're making, so that you don't have to continue to be the metronome and have the debate about, oh, maybe we should do more, maybe we should do better. Because that's not a fun place to be, and it'll lead you to being stuck and stagnant. Here's the too long didn't read version. This is the actionable stuff. So this is the steps you want to take. So first you have to start by defining quality and quantity. You got to get specific. What do those actually mean to you? You need to, quantity metrics are easy. Quality metrics can be hard depending on what type of, what aspect of your community you're trying to assign a metric of quality to. And then, most importantly, you have to understand how those metrics affect one another. They are not independent. They always are. increasing quantity can either decrease or increase quality, vice versa. There's all kinds of dynamics there. You got to figure it out for your context. And once you know that, actions should become clear, but you need an action plan and bonus points if you're not like me and you document all of this thought. And we'll come back to this, I promise, in more detail. But first of all, has anybody seen stuff like this? Like the truth about quantity versus quality. One is actually better. My take is, of course there is, because better is better, right? Quality is better, quantity is actually more. So of course quality is better than quantity, right? That's really not helpful. Saying that quality is better than quantity is obvious and not helpful. And then there's also this hot take, right? Quality or quantity, you need both. Like I said earlier, like if we could all have both, we just would do it. We wouldn't be having the debate. And I think this kind of trivializes how difficult it actually is to figure out how to do this right. So that's not helpful either. Can't have both. Not always. Here's how I want us to start thinking about this. Rather than thinking about quality, quantity as like a seesaw where you have to find a balance, think about quality and quantity as a tool that you can use on a path to reach the other. So if you have a lot of quality in your community or a piece of your community programming, how do you use that quality to produce something of quantity? Or if you have a lot of quantity of something, how do you use that quantity to produce something of quality? This way, instead of trying to find a balance, like a homeostasis, which like means stagnance, basically, you're forming a path, right? You're choosing a destination for yourself and building upon something for your community. So just a different way of framing the dichotomy here, because it's actually not a dichotomy. So here's some examples. I might have skipped a slide here. I didn't skip a slide. Yes. Toyota, right? Huge auto manufacturer. Back in the 60s and 70s, their cars were kind of garbage. And this is like in the heyday of Detroit automakers, right? Detroit automakers were doing really well. Foreign cars were. Toyota decided to become obsessive about quality. They started using a methodology called lean manufacturing, which I would recommend you read about because it's just fascinating. Good way to build business acumen. They implemented culture of like really obsessing about details so that even upper management had really granular understanding of what was happening on production lines. And because they were able to manage quality so tightly, that led eventually to them selling lots of cars because they were reliable, they were relatively cheap because they weren't wasting resources on the production line. So this is like this is what I mean when quality can be a path to quantity. On the other side of the coin is Eli Whitney. We all know him, I hope, from grade school because we all learned that he invented the cotton gin. Turns out about 3 years later, we got a really big government contract to produce 10,000 rifles for the United States Army, which was getting involved in the French Revolution at the time. He had never produced rifles before, but he had an idea. And his idea was, at the time, the way they produced a rifle was you build one barrel and one stock and one trigger assembly and one set of sights and one firing mechanism, and you put it all together and you got one rifle, and then you start another one. The problem with that is that once you get on the battlefield and your gun breaks or you need a replacement part, or it just needs it, like you clean it up or repair, you can't do it. These parts are not interchangeable. So that's a quality issue. A quality firearm would be able to be repaired and have interchangeable parts and be like a predictable performer in the battlefield. The way that Eli Whitney went about producing quality was to produce 10,000 barrels at once and make them the same. and then produce 10,000 stocks at once and make them the same, and then just piece them together. It didn't need to be this stock with this barrel, right? So this is a situation where he used the size of the contract is really what allowed him to do this, because he knew he could produce 10,000, not just one at a time. So he was able to produce a quality firearm because it was reliable, easy to repair, had interchangeable parts. Okay, so this is kind of what sums it up for me. It's a quote that has been attributed to many different people, but the quote is, "Quantity has a quality all its own." Quantity has a quality all its own, which basically means if you have enough Russian soldiers, you can beat a German tank. And this quote has been attributed to all kinds of people. Maybe the Buddha said it, maybe it was Stalin, but I think you get the point. And at this point, you're probably all thinking, oh my gosh, this is boring. Really, or maybe it's interesting, but what does this have to do with me? And so, like I would do with my wife, I'm going to get your attention back with pictures of my dogs. On the left is Newt when she was a puppy with her little sweater, and on the right is Olive. And I could talk about them all day, but I'm going to try not to. And now that I have you back, let's get into the process. So this is where we start talking about how this applies to you. Like, what do you actually do with this new frame of looking at quality and quantity? And I'll share a little bit about how we've done it so far at Sales Hacker and Outreach and the journey we're on, because we by no means have completely solved this. But we've learned some things. I'll share that with you. So again, really quick overview. You need to define the two. For what do they mean for you? You need to assign metrics to them, understand how those metrics affect one another, and then hopefully action becomes obvious. And bonus points if you're not like me and you document that process. So here's what that looks like at Sales Hacker. And this is just a snapshot. There's a lot more that we've defined in terms of quantity and quality, but some of our examples of, the quantities we're looking at: members growth, right? Forum activity, like number of posts. What's the amount of events that we're holding? FYI, it's 8 a month, and it's kind of a lot. And how much content are we publishing? 3 articles a week, 3 or 4. On the quality side, what matters to our community, and what, importantly, what differentiates our community from the other options out there? I sometimes hear in the community world that we're not in competition with one another, and I really like that sentiment. And it's true that our members as community managers should, and maybe can and should be members of other communities like ours. But if we aren't delivering a unique value that's not being offered elsewhere, there's no benefit to the members. And then there's certainly no benefit to us as community managers or the companies we work for. So you do have to have a unique quality that you bring to members. And those things for us are discoverability. There are lots of other great sales communities out there. Sales Hacker is one that is easiest to find what you're looking for quickly. So that's important to us, and we want to double down on that. Sense of belonging is always important. Admittedly, not a strong point of Sales Hacker, but something we want to work on. Depth and comprehensiveness. So when we cover a topic for our sales folks, we want to do it once and do it well. They do not have the patience for reading 10 different takes on one topic and deciding what fits them. Most of the time. Most of the time, our members want the quick take. So depth and comprehensiveness is an important quality, like a facet of quality for us. And authority. They also are some, some person who happens to have an opinion. They want to know that the person that they're interacting with, or getting an answer from, or reading an article from, has earned the right to have that opinion through experience, and that there's proof that they have the experience. And so assigning metrics to that. This is what that looks like for us. As you can imagine, the quantity metrics, very, very easy. You count the number of members and posts and comments and events and articles, right? Quality is a little trickier, and you have to assign a metric, but you're also going to have to know that sometimes you can't perfectly measure one of these things. Like discoverability could mean a lot of things. It could mean, how much word of mouth referral is there? How visible is our community showing up on LinkedIn? We've chosen to look at the percentage of our traffic from organic search. So people typing into Google, how do I do this? And finding a discussion that's happened on Sales Hacker or an article that a Sales Hacker community member wrote. Sense of belonging. You can use maybe the sense of community index. If you don't know what that is, maybe Ivan can link to it. That's really a useful framework for measuring sense of belonging and sense of community. We've chosen to just look at percentage of 30 members that are still engaged after 30 days of becoming a member. All right, so they are taking actions anytime after 30 days. We figure it's a close enough proxy for measuring sense of belonging. Depth and comprehensiveness, we look like how long are these threads, how well are we covering the topics. And authority, this one's fun. This is my favorite metric. It's really hard to measure, very subjective, but I like to look for thank yous. So when I do a community event like this one for our community, if my moderators and my panelists or guest speakers get a bunch of LinkedIn messages after and say, hey, thanks so much for that. That's how I know that we've had a good event that was valuable and authoritative for the member. So number of thank yous. Also, not just hard to define that quality metric, but hard to measure, but it's what we chose nonetheless. Okay. Here's an example of another just way to think about assigning metrics. This is a nice engagement framework that I like from Community Roundtable. You can just Google Community Roundtable engagement framework. They've got 4 stages of engagement, and at each stage, they've identified 2 possible metrics, just as an example. So for instance, in the comfort stage on the left there, you've got number of validations and the percent of people validating. Number of validations is a quantity, percent of people validating is a quality, the ratio. Same goes for the whole rest of the journey. And I definitely recommend making sure that the things that when you assign quantity and quality, you're thinking about each stage of your member's journey. Should go without saying. So let's talk about understanding how these relate to one another, because they always do. Quantity and quality do not exist in separate little vacuums of their own. I think this is a really clear example. So in the connection phase from that engagement framework, we've got number of shares and the percent of members sharing. Number of shares divided by the total number of members is the percentage sharing. So quantity here is an input to quality, meaning you cannot get to quality without a quantity of shares. It also means that if you have a low number of shares, quality drops. So quantity and quality are correlated in this case. That's not always the case. Sometimes they're opposite. Like if something goes, like if for instance, number of members goes up and the number of shares doesn't, right? They have a negative correlation. This isn't supposed to be mind-blowing. It might feel kind of obvious, but I think a lot of times we don't think about this. At least I didn't, and my team didn't, until we just wrote it down and had it in front of us. And once we started talking about our ratios, quality and quantity this way, it kind of changed things for us once we started understanding the relationship. Here's an example in our world. This might get a little bit nitty-gritty, and it might not apply to your situation, but sharing how it works for us. So we look at the number of visits to Sales Hacker that come from Google, and we divide that by the total number of sessions. So that gets us that percent of organic search traffic, how discoverable is the, that's important to our members. It's important to us too. So that's the ratio. And then we can look at the number of discussions we're getting. We know that about 1/3 of our discussions will at some point rank for something in Google search, and that the average clicks they will get per month is 24 clicks. So for each new discussion, we're getting about 8 new sessions from organic search per month. I know this is a little in the weeds and like math nerdy. I'm not saying you have to understand or memorize my version of for my team. But I'm saying you should get math nerdy about this and figure out exactly how much these levers move the other things. I know that every new discussion will lead to 8 new sessions from organic search traffic per month on average, and averages are only so useful because there's obviously outliers. But it helps to have that model, right? So that we know how quantity is an input to quality when we talk about forum discussions on Sales Hacker. I can also now communicate this to my execs, by the way, and look smart, which is good. And this is what that looks like for us over 16 months. So this is the last 16 months of organic search traffic to the Sales Hacker community specifically. We've had articles and webinars and blog and things like that up for a long time. This is just to our forum. And as we kind of collect a few discussions a week, more discussions a week, maybe a dozen, it stacks up over time. And so this is where the number of quantity leads to both a quantity, it leads to traffic, which is a quantity metric. But as we said, discoverability is a quality metric for us as well. I feel I may be going fast. Maybe the espresso was a mistake, but hopefully you're following. Now we're talking about action. And this one's up to you. And I can share, the actions we've taken, but at this point, you should be able to answer these questions. And so the actions kind of become obvious. So do you have a clear path from quantity to quality or vice versa? Can you envision it as a state A to a state B rather than a balance? Are you comfortable with the current rate at which you're heading to that path right now? So again, not looking at, are you comfortable with the balance? Are you comfortable with how fast or how aggressively you're pushing towards the future goal of better quality or more quantity? You got to identify the levers that you can pull. Like in those equations that we were looking at, what are the things that I can actually control? I can control to some extent the number of discussions, like I can limit it and focus discussion on a few key threads per day, or I can invite lots of people to come in and start new threads. I can improve the likelihood of things ranking in SEO by hiring an SEO contractor, or having one of the members of the team work to improve how well those discussions are optimized. And I can improve, how well they rank as well in the same way. And then this is an exercise that I like to run with my team. We do it once a month in our one-to-ones. Is nobody's ever asking us to do less, right? So we sit down and we make to-don't lists. So when you're making these trade-offs, it means you're not going to do something. You have to be okay with that and then communicate it and communicate it again and again and repeat it, because you're always going to get asked to do more. The rules for a to-don't list are, you can't say, so it's a list of things you're going to stop doing. You're actively doing now that you're going to stop doing. Sometimes there's nothing on the list, but it's a worthwhile exercise to do. The rules are, you cannot have a double negative, like I'm going to stop not doing something, because that's starting. And you can't, so for instance, I can't say I'm going to stop showing up late to meetings, because really that's going to be, I'm going to start showing up on time. It's a good thing to do, but it doesn't belong on the to-don't list. The to-don't list is something you're going to take off your plate. And then lastly, you have to communicate the plan to stakeholders, because it's not enough for you to understand these levers. And you don't want to walk your stakeholders through the weeds of all your metrics like I just did to you. You want to find a way to communicate that shows that you're in control, that there's a plan, that there's a strategy at a slightly higher level than we've talked through today. Here's my certificate of hypocrisy, because the funny part is I have documented none of this, but documentation is super important, and hopefully you all know that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. So I went fast here, and I think this is pretty much the end. So we have extra time for Q&A. I'm more than happy to clarify anything, because I did go fast, and I'm looking forward to having a fruitful discussion. Here again is the process in a high level. You've got definitions, you assign metrics, how those metrics affect one another. You've got your actions, and you document it. I mean, on LinkedIn, I am hiring. I don't have job postings yet. I'm hiring a community events manager who will be in charge of masterclasses like this for our sales audience, as well as more intimate roundtable events and some in-person salons, and a community programs manager who will be helping with awesome stuff like getting our customers more involved, getting our sales folks more involved, improving onboarding for both our customers and our employees and our community members, all kinds of really fun projects on both sides. So get in touch.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you. That was fun. Sorry I went so fast. Hopefully we got some good questions for discussion here.
Yeah, you went super fast, but we're here for it. Yay. Ivan dropped your LinkedIn in the chat, so that's all good to go. Hopefully you'll get a bunch of messages for that role. It's super exciting. Jessica, just to address your quick question, this will be recorded. So you'll be able to, this is recorded, so you'll be able to see the discoverability slide if you need to take any notes. But if you have any questions specific to that, you can go ahead and drop that into the Q&A, and Colin and I will cover that. Okay, so let's start from the top. There are so many questions here, Colin. Oh my goodness, I don't even know.
Fun.
I know. Thank goodness we have a lot of time for this. Okay, we're just going to go up and down first. Okay, so Lauren asks, how do you define engagement specifically for a percentage 30-day engaged members? What activity do you use to define their engagement?
Yeah, we debate this a lot still too, honestly. The model that we settled on for engagement was that we have an active, we have a lurker, an active, and engaged. You're a lurker if you sign in and that's it. You're active if you're active in the last 30 days, so you fit in that bucket. And engagement is an action that can make you active, right? So engagement is in the community, starting a discussion, liking a post, replying to a post, attending an event. Engagement is like beyond signing in and doing something that isn't just passively reading through threads and accepting what comes at you. That's how we've defined it. We have folks on our team who have suggested that liking a post shouldn't make you an engaged member, shouldn't be a signal. We have folks who say bookmarking a post should be a signal of engagement. The truth is, I don't think it matters a whole lot at the end of the day how you define it, just that you settle on a definition, communicate well about what that is, especially upwards to your leadership.
And once you set, and once you set those, and that's it. Okay, I'm taking these down. All right, so the next upvoted question is from Lauren. How would you calculate engagement from within an invite only / private community? Because you had mentioned your equation was based off of Google searches, right?
Yeah, so for us, we do have, the community is open, right? Anybody can go to Sales Hacker and read it. You don't have to be a member to have a discussion, ask a question, answer, save things for your feed, upvote, downvote, you have to be a member. So there is not an aspect of privacy, but there is an aspect of exclusivity to the engagement for us. If you have a completely closed community, you should still be able to measure engagement. I would imagine it depends what your platform is, but you have a list of all your members, and then you have a list of members who actually, have discussions or go to your meetups or collaborate on the pieces of work that your community members are doing together. So it depends a little bit on the shape of your community and the platform you're using, but essentially it's people doing things in your community divided by the total members in your community.
Okay, so I want to ask this question because Veronique kind of has the same thing and it's in the same line. Like, so what metrics do you use for B2B community closed groups versus the open public community? Do you have an example of any of those metrics?
Yeah, so in our case, the open public community, the fact that it's article, we think of that as the top of the funnel. And the purpose of those interactions is to hopefully one day help that person become a full member of the community, where we can then take them through member onboarding and get them into private roundtables, introduce them to groups and things like that. So the metrics for the public pieces are traffic. Like, are we getting people to the site? Do they know we exist? And then sometimes things like time on site, when they show up, are they disappointed and they leave immediately, or do they spend some time and actually like it? We also look at they sign up for the newsletter. When we look at metrics for engagement, those people who are full members, we look at frequency of visits. How often do they come back to Sales Hacker? We look at engagement decay, which happens, right? They sign up when they need something, and maybe for that next week they're like, wow, this is great, and then they get busy at work and they forget about it, and over time you can see their activity taper off. So we want to see that taper become less steep and keep people more engaged over time. So we look at a decay rate for our members. It helps a little bit that our community is custom built on WordPress, and that we've used Amplitude, which is a really nice product metrics tracking bit of software. So I'm not using any out of the box community specific analytics tools. We engineer our own measurement solutions. We defined all of our own metrics and dimensions that we wanted to measure, which was a hell of a project, but it was worth the effort.
Yeah, that sounds, so some of those metrics you mentioned obviously sound very familiar, but like engagement decay, I've never heard that term before, and so that was really interesting to hear and see how you've developed that using WordPress and Amplitude. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Honestly, I wouldn't even know all the details there. I have a lead engineer who helped implement that. And if anybody's curious about how that works, I might be able to tell you about it. And if a bunch of people reach out and want to talk about it, we can maybe put together an informal meetup and walk you through what we've got.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Thanks for offering that. Sign me up. Okay, so the next one is from Claire, because a lot of that can apply to what I run for the community events for CMX. So that's really great, because we do the repeat attendees and all of that stuff too. But the decay, that just sounds cool. Okay, yeah. So this one from Claire. Do you use any member experience metrics for quality like NPS? And we all know about that. And CSAT? I've never heard of that. I'm going to Google that right now, Claire.
So we have been using NPS, and I think I'm going to stop. CSAT is similar. It's customer satisfaction. It's not quite as, in my opinion, not quite as clean and simple as NPS score. But with both of them, you can take pulses along different points of the journey, and then you can do like a general overall CSAT or NPS once a year or once a quarter. We have been using NPS. I want us to stop because it's one, the people who reply when we ask about NPS are usually like it's only a subset of our users, and so I think we're putting ourselves in a situation where we're not really getting a good cross section of our membership when we ask that question. And I also have found it not very actionable, but we still attach meaning to it. And so it can be really reinforcing for the team and make them feel like everything's going perfectly, or it can make them feel like everything's going badly when neither of those is necessarily true. And I don't want my team feeling bad if that's not the case. And I don't want them feeling everything's going well if that's not the case, especially if there's no actions attached to it. So we're going to stop.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We do the NPS score. It's pretty standard across all of like events and, especially for the events in general. So applying that to events / community, that makes sense. That's interesting. The next question is from Alyssa, and I think it's because you had just mentioned this, but they would like to hear what you're sharing with your stakeholders regarding metrics wise when it comes to engagement.
Yeah, this is all brand new. So right now, what I share is our community is really big. To be honest, I haven't worked out flexing that muscle yet, and this is why we're here early. Anne-Marie and I were talking about what would I like to learn from masterclasses. Are you laughing because you identified with that, Anne-Marie?
I'm so laughing because I identified with that. Our community is big, period. Give me money so I can do the work.
One of the things that we were talking about, I want to learn from an upcoming masterclass is like building internal champions. So far, Sales Hacker is an acquired community. Outreach bought Sales Hacker as an investment. Sales Hacker's been operating as a separate brand within Outreach for the last 3 years. And we haven't done the work yet to align in the way that Bevy and CMX have. Like, I think y'all, like I said, y'all are doing a great job. We're working on that now. So the communication has been, Sales Hacker's awesome. It's really big. All the salespeople are there, and that's about it. Sorry, I don't have a better answer.
No, I'm just kind of thinking about that one too, but definitely we'll get you a masterclass especially for you, Colin. So I will send you that invite personally once I book that event. Promise.
I'll be there.
Okay, great to hear. Okay, so let's go. And so Claire asked a question. Well, what is the stickiness score of a community at that scale? I think it was in regards to like one of your first few slides. Let me see.
Yeah, so 300,000 visits a month, 90,000 subscribers, about 30,000 full members. And the answer, it depends what you mean by stickiness scale, but I'm guessing you mean like what's the frequency with which people return and how often do they return? Like what's the recency? Subjectively, the answer is low, but we're okay with that. The way that we see Sales Hacker is us building a compendium of kind of canonical knowledge for modern sales pros that throw out the traditional, like always be closing sales trash and have like collaborative, digital native sales approaches described in detail and up to date. So it's almost like a Wikipedia specifically for sales, or maybe a Stack Overflow for sales. So we're okay if somebody only needs our help 2 times a year, or they just want to be super in it and giving and getting help 3 times a week. But overall, the stickiness as well.
Okay, thank you for that. We've got a great question from Lauren that has so many upvotes because we all want to know, what is the size of your community team? how many people roles does it take to make Sales Hacker successful? We've given some examples, like just a little context, like especially in the community MBA. And I think it was like Atlassian, and it was great case study on them. And then we come to find out they have like 25 people on their community team. And I was like, let's go, party three over here. Like, we can do this. So Lauren, thank you for that question. And Colin, would you mind sharing like kind of what your team and the structure looks like?
Yeah, I should have put that on the contact slide. There are 7 of us. And the reason I'm able to have a big team is that Sales Hacker pays for itself. We take sponsorship revenue on our masterclasses and our newsletter and podcasts, all the things. So we have we kill it, we keep it policy. So the most important thing is
you smiled and I know. Okay, what was it? We have
we kill it, we keep it policy. So all of the revenue we make is our budget. So I have the most important part of the team is a partnerships manager who is selling the sponsorships. I have a lead engineer / like community ops person, and he has a few contractors that he manages to get things done and build, on WordPress. I've got 2 folks helping create written content and working with our contributors to do that. 1 person is focused on distributing that content, chopping it up for social media, making bite-sized nuggets for the newsletter, testing things, doing A/B tests, and distributing things on Reddit and Quora and stuff like that. And then, of course, there's a community manager, and which I'm hiring for, community programs, and a community events manager that I'm also hiring for.
Do you hear that, audience? That's the plug there. If you're looking, Colin's the guy. His LinkedIn, Ivan dropped that in the chat. That's really interesting. So you sell, really quickly, I want to touch on this a little because I'm interested too. You sell partnerships. Your partnership manager sells community Sales Hacker related sponsorships year round.
Correct. Yeah. We don't usually do an annual sponsorship. What we have is like a calendar of events, right? Or open slots for events. And we've worked really closely with other companies who are interested in selling to our audience for a long time, or at least marketing to our audience for a long time. And what we do is we'll reach out to one of those folks, might be Salesforce, and say, hey, we've got the slot open in December. Would you like to do a webinar with us? We work on the topic together. We create the content together, and we have quality guidelines so that they aren't pitching our community, because that would be bad.
Of course.
And that costs them money. They do get the lead list, so that's the value for the sponsor. They're essentially paying for the opportunity to get the list of registrants from the webinar.
And that's opt-in, right?
Yes. Oh, of course.
And of course, opt-in. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And that really comes from Sales Hacker was a media company before it was a true community with a forum and logins and full membership. So that was the business model before we launched the forum last year.
And kind of in question to that, Lisa asked, how do you show your sponsors ROI on your community?
Oh, it's sponsors, especially in the past year, all of their field marketing budgets are useless. So they can't hold in-person events like they used to. So they've had to turn to community for sponsorship. And I can almost guarantee you that if you have an audience in a community and the community wants to learn things, you have people who will pay you money to teach your community things. You just have to be really careful about the quality of those events and helping your partners understand that they cannot pitch ever. And help your community and be transparent to your members that, there's an opt-in process that if they attend the event, their information may be shared, or be really explicit if they check the box. I think I lost my train of thought. What was the question? Did I answer it?
Ivan dismissed it. Let's see. Okay, answered. Here we
It's okay.
go. Let's see. Lisa had said, oh yeah. How do you show your sponsors ROI on your community?
Oh,
I mean, you have a pitch deck and everything, right? I'm assuming so.
we
And
have
all
a prospectus.
perspective.
Yep. And the way they see our, so what they're comparing it to is physical events, which are really costly, and they see ROI and that they get the lead list. And most of the like customer contact for us is a marketer, and they're desperate for leads. So when they get a number of like a list of people who have said, hey, yeah, you can talk to me, that makes them look awesome. And truth be told, even though marketers talk about it all the time, they are not doing the work to attribute revenue to those leads. So they don't know if it ever becomes a sale for them. They should, but they don't know. And I don't have insight into their funnel to be able to help them with that. So they're usually just happy with the number of leads in the list.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's move on a little bit. We still have a couple more minutes. I think we can get through like maybe 2 more questions. So Ivan posted on behalf of George, and George is asking, discoverability means that your community is wide open. So obviously we really like that, the wide versus, or the open versus closed communities. So your community is wide open to the public. Is there a part of Sales Hacker that is private? How do you make the Sales Hacker community a safe space to post and engage?
Yeah, so the Sales Hacker, that is candidly something that's been a challenge. We debated asking people to set up, or giving people the option to set up anonymous accounts and kind of making that community the community norm when we launched, because we thought, is an SDR gonna post and say, I have no idea what I'm doing, please help, if their name is attached to the post? And what we found is that these sales folks are surprisingly willing to be vulnerable and just ask for help. I do think we would have more engagement if we encouraged anonymity, but I think it would also be harder to display the fact that when you get answers, you're getting answers from someone who you can trust. So that's the trade-off we made. We do have private sections of the community, private groups that we've built in, where you can only be added by invitation. They depend on geo, sometimes title, sometimes industry, things like that. And those groups are not searchable, findable, like discoverable. They're just for people who in a small group want to take the vulnerability to the next level and talk without Big Brother looking over their shoulder.
Yeah, everyone always needs that space where they can just kind of let loose and feel comfortable and all of that. So that definitely makes
important.
sense. Very important. Okay, so Patricia is asking, how do you measure the sense of belonging?
I haven't started this yet, but I'm a big fan of, and we are about to launch a survey using the sense of community index, which is here. You have to reach it. It's a piece of IP. It's trademarked or copyrighted or whatever. So you have to reach out to them and get permission to use it for your use case. So please do that. But it's backed by academic research, and it seems pretty solid to me. I think it should become an industry standard.
Definitely. All right, Patricia, if you're still on, then there you go. Take a peek at that. Okay, so I think we have time for one more. Are you ready for one more question?
I'm ready for the last one.
Okay, the last one, and then we're good. Okay, everyone seems to be going back into metrics and this. Okay, so Christian, they say, okay, related to community team size, how do you level what your team can accomplish based on team size? Like if I had 2 head count, here's the max we can accomplish versus 7, and here's what we can do. That's a tough question.
Yeah, it is hard. I do think we've made really liberal use of virtual assistants. So automation is your friend. And when something can't be automated yet with a Zapier or Tray, something like that, outsource it. There are people all over the world who have the skills to help on a part-time basis. Use Upwork if you need to. We ended up finally going through a virtual, it's like a virtual assistant outsourcing company, and we have a full team of people. So when I say we run 2 community events every week, all my team has to do is work on the topic, the copy for the landing page, and coach our partners into producing good content. The team of virtual assistants puts together the landing page and the emails for promotion and sends all that stuff out on a playbook that we've designed that works for us and for our members. Beyond that, I would say make use of the urgent and important matrix. I think it's called the Eisenhower matrix or something like that. Basically, you have a 2x2 grid of urgency and importance. And the things that are urgent and important, you do them now. The things that are important but not urgent, you plan to do them, make a plan. The things that are urgent and not important, you delegate to somebody else. Find a way to get somebody else to do it. And if it's not important or urgent at all, you just don't do it. That's your friend. Prioritize ruthlessly.
Yeah, I'm learning so much right now. My whole full little thing of notes from your talk, Colin. I think I learned the most out of everybody. I'm ready to start putting all these action items into play. Okay, and I totally lied to you. We're going to have one more question only because Katie asked it. Okay, Katie, this one's for you. Okay, what's one, and I love it too. What's one thing you would tell someone building their first community? Go.
Katie. Hey, Katie. I miss you already, Katie. Hopefully you didn't miss the shout out for you. Super proud of you and good luck at Clary. I think the most important thing for anybody launching or building their first community is talk to members before you launch. Involve them. You're not building for anybody, you're building with people, right? It takes a community to build a community. Talk a lot. Listen.
And that's what we do, right? As community professionals, we talk to each other, we learn from each other, we grow with each other. So there you go.
And you're a champ at it, Katie. You're going to crush it at Clary. I'm rooting for you.
That was so great. Thank you so much, Colin. That was so jam-packed. I hope everyone here got all the tidbits they needed. There's a lot of info. This will be recorded and posted to our YouTube, so you can go back, review, get all that stuff. Yeah.
Denise, right to my heart, Denise. I love it. Thank you all so much. This was a joy. Really great way to start to wrap up my Wednesday. Thanks, everybody.
Definitely. Oh, I have one last slide here. I forgot. We have more events coming up at CMX. Join us. Next week, we've got an intro to Web 3.0 for community builders. You all said you want to learn about the metaverse, and I've learned so much putting this together for you. So please come join us. And then we've also have CMX Winter Survey happening on December 8th, and that event will be ready shortly. So see you all there.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.